Thank you very much, and I think it's really an honor for me to present today. This giving you a glance, in let's say together with this for this occasion of where we have to basically today or in these weeks, as you mentioned, it's one of the most important issue, or the most important issue we as a society we are facing. So you have to decide, or policy makers, society have to decide which future path, how will our planet, our society look like in the coming decades and centuries. And I think here this is one of the plots which will be likely the basis of the discussion. So should we continue as we are doing, or should we make huge efforts to bend this curve and keep a plan which looks more or less like it is today? I think this graph here doesn't represent much the effort which is needed, and it's more when you take what is the carbon emission. This is one of the main parameters. Tells us, yes, if we want to keep something which looks well difficult but still reasonable, it's enormous effort. We have to basically reduce our carbon footprint in very short time for a huge amount. This is something, well, as you mentioned, science, we can provide some means, we can mitigate the efforts, but it will require basically a global societal effort. And in this brief talk, I try just to give a glance, a brief overview on how neutrons, or by some selected example, can help this task, which I believe, well, we have to, it has to be addressed by everyone and every single sector. As you and guess from this, so I will talk about how we convert, or we get electrical current, but how we convert energy from one shape from one form to another one, and at the end how we can better consume it in a more efficient way. Some examples to show how neutrons might be used and some of the properties which you mentioned before. You might guess here from this picture here, we start from, well, organic photovoltaics is something where neutrons are used, which allows it to produce or to design some solar panels which can be installed in different positions, as we will do with an organic one, or they're cheaper and easier to produce in mass production. As every solar panel, well, we have a layered structure. We have some support things, some conductors. The most important part, of where a large part of science going on, is this photoactive layer. It's the layer where solar energy is converted in electrical current, and it might have some weird or some non-trivial morphology to optimize that. And it's here where neutrons come in. Why have this complex morphology? Well, we have light which shines in. At this interface between at least two different materials, we create a pair of a positive negative charge, which is created at the interface. So we want to have as much interface as possible. So I would say, yeah, why don't you molecular mix them? It's the best, the most interface. At the same time, we have to transport these charges to the different electrodes. So we want to have to separate it at the same time. So this will require us to have, let's say, a microphase separation. So to have them mixed and to have them separated. Some typical materials which are used for this type of design is some polyethylene, some fullerenes. It's, well, we have to play with the chemistry of these substituents to see how do they mix, which energy they absorb, how they behave, how we can create these structures. But to probe these structures, we can exploit neutron reflectometry. Neutron reflectometry in general, is the technique to use layered materials to probe the structure, let's say, across a certain substrate. For this case, we will probe what is the material distribution in this direction, or in this direction, perpendicular to the solar one. And it's where the physics of this plays on. In addition to say, well, how is my material distributed? Let's say off spectral reflectometry, we can check, yes, how is the mixing at this different layer? Is it molecularly smooth? Is it gradual? Is it highly rough? Or is it a roughness which has a long periodicity? All these parameters take a role when it comes to the efficiency of the solar panel. So we go to some real data, some experiments which has been performed on the neutron reflectometer D17 at AL with Philip and published 2 years ago. And this is how our neutron reflectivity curves look like. This was recorded as a blend of these two materials which I've shown you before at ambient temperature. If this coating or this blend is heated up at 140 degrees, you see this curve look different. You might not be an expert in neutron reflectometry, but these two curves tell you, well, the substrate or the morphology of this coating is not the same in the two cases. You can analyze those two curves, and this is what we usually get from neutron reflectometry curve. It's a distribution of material along the, let's say, the normal to the glass, or in this case, the ITO substrate. The very important thing here, without going into the detail, is that when you blend it, you have this fullerene-based material which accumulates at the center of this blend, and after heating, it migrates to the two interfaces. This is not so good, or it might be good. It depends on what materials you use. For instance, for this particular case, you don't want to have this component, the fullerene-based, attached to the ITO substrate. So this is something you would like to suppress, which you can do by changing the annealing condition to substitute it differently, or well, to better adapt it. While here, this enrichment at this interface is very desirable. In addition to that, you would like how does the cooling process and the treatment process in general affects or alters the internal structure of the layer. So it's how we can look how neutron reflectometry provides us. It means to optimize the procedure and the deposition and annealing part of the occupation of this photovoltaics. I'd like now to change a little bit topic. We have produced some electrical current, or we have produced some, we have stored energy as a chemical energy, switching to, for instance, hydrogen here. And we'd like to convert it in electrical current. You might guess here, then from the sketch, we're talking about fuel cell. I will be very rapidly here through, but we get the essential is we use a fuel. In many cases, it's hydrogen, can be some other gas. But there are some fundamental steps. One is to split the hydrogen into proton and electrons. The protons are transparent through the electrolyte membrane, which at the cathode they recombine with the oxygens and with the electrodes, which had to make a tour from around. Here, a reaction occurs between hydrogens, between protons, the electrons, and oxygens to produce water, and we get the current. The principle is relatively simple, but there's some challenges. One is, well, you need a cost which is relatively high of the catalyst. The water management, that's what we are addressing by neutron science. Well, to transport protons, this membrane needs to be hydrated, that it cannot be too much hydrated. During the reaction, water is produced. This water needs to evaporate it, but so you have to keep the membrane dry and you have to get rid of the water. And in addition to getting rid of the heat which is produced by this reaction. So this is something here, in particular for water, where neutrons are essential because they see the protons, they see hydrogen. And in this study, which I was showing you, this water was probed by two different techniques, but not simultaneously, on the same cell. They worked with a fully working assembled cell. So this is a cell which during the experiment were producing electricity. And what you can see that this is a radiography, like the one which you do when you get to the doctor and have a broken bone, except that neutrons are transparent to metals, which make them very essential for this type of studies. What you see here in lighter color, which is less transparent, is the water. Water is very rich in hydrogen. Hydrogen is not so transparent to neutron, so we see them. So we look basically here, which make a picture of the cell through this axis. And what you see here is the channels where the gas flows through. At the same time, you can do it by small angle scattering. You can probe the state of the membrane at the center, which is, let's say, between this sandwiched between the two layers. You can see how this membrane is hydrated. If we look at that more in detail, you see here there's the channel. So here we have turned the image. The channel is working like this. You have water which is accumulating, we'll see from the light color, at the interface between the rib and the channel at this part. And also you see the scattering curves of the membrane, which vary when the membrane is at the level of the channel or its level of the rib. This taking maybe a summary of that. You see here again, the increased accumulation of water at the rib channel interface, and you see how the membrane is hydrated and it varies. These parameters are also both essential for the correct functioning of the fuel cell, and it basically tells you where you have to work to improve it, where the problems may arise. And here neutrons basically give you a tool to tell you exactly where the wet water is and what's the hydration of the membrane. I think on this we will get some details later on. So I move to, let's say, to the consumption, and we completely change topic because here I'd like to move into the part of soft matter and surfactant science. I've found this nice graph. Let's say we don't need to better produce energy in a clean way, but most of all we need to consume much less energy. I think that's still, if we look what a fridge, a dishwasher, a freezer has been consuming in Europe in the last 30 years, we have basically halved the consumption. So we agree we have to reduce as consumption, but we still would like to have clean clothes. And the solution of not cleaning them, it's probably hard to impose. Where come these energy savings from? Well, mostly it's that you're washing at lower temperature and you're using much less water. You might have noticed that the washing programs get much longer, but basically the energy which you need to your washing cycle comes from heating up the water. In addition to that, so we have to wash at low temperatures. This is an issue because most of the grease of dirt is solid at low temperature and it's liquid at high temperature, much difficult to clean. But another challenge is that nowadays we have much stricter regulation. What can come into a dishwashing on a washing product in any formulation? We don't have just a global warming issue. We have also environmental issues. We cannot put tons of phosphates in our wastewater. So we have two different aspects which we have to consider. How does the washing process look like? So we start with a dirty fabric. We have here a fabric, some grease, which is here. We add surfactants to the system, which have a part which very much like to absorbs or solubilize the dirt, and these blue parts which are very soluble in water. At the end up, we will ideally end up with a micelle which is loaded with dirt, and it's soluble in water. We wash it away, and we left up with the clean fabric. To help this process, one of the most common strategies is to include enzymes which break up the dirt. All these objects here, these micelles, the enzymes, have the scale of few nanometers, and so it's ideally suited for small angle scattering, which provides us with insight into these structures. Here are some calculated curves of objects which might be spherical, elongated disc-like, so it allows us to determine what's the size and the shape of these aggregates. We can see how many of these surfactants participate into these aggregates, where's the water, or where some compounds are localized. It might be enzymes, it might be the dirt, but it might be also drugs or other molecules when it comes to different fields like drug delivery. And my question, so you might wonder why we want to distinguish, why do we want this information to distinguish between a rod-like micelle, a spherical micelle? Because they might clean with similar efficiency, but the rheological, the viscoelastic properties are completely different. So you take another recent example of a novel class of surfactant, which is alkyl glucoside. Here you have an alkyl chain, the yellow tails, which I've shown you before, and the hydrophilic part is some sugar units. The only difference between these two surfactants is the type of bond. It's an alpha or beta bond between the head group and the tail. But you see that this surfactant with alpha, it makes very liquid solutions. They're liquid as it was water with high concentrations. This one with the beta bond made viscoelastic solution. Viscoelastic means it's very viscous when it's not sheared, when it's in the bottle. You can pour it out of the bottle and then you get it on your hand, but then it stays liquid, it stays again quite viscous at the end. The question, why is it like that? Why do they behave, and how can you tune to the desired properties by mixing them? So the authors went on 11, you measure some typical small scattering curves. You see some that the length of the micelles changes. You form some rod-like micelles in this case, some globular micelles on the other one, and you can clearly see how it correlate. They get globular long, and the viscosity changes from 2 orders of magnitude. So here neutrons provide us why is this these properties change. So to sum up, we have looked at with the neutron reflectology layered structure, organic photovoltaics, which can tell us where is water located, is essential for fuel cell, and I've given a glance on how surfactant science is used to improve our way we consume electricity. Just a few examples, there's much more topics which all are connected to global warming and energetic issues, and all of them neutrons can provide a substantial contributions. So thank you very much for listening.